Vivian Lawson sighed as she glanced at the clock on her office wall. 6:45 p.m. Another late evening. The bank had been swamped with clients all day, and as one of the senior managers, she could never leave on time. Her phone buzzed. A message from her 10-year-old daughter, Lily. "Mom, Mike and I are hungry. When are you coming home?" Her chest tightened with guilt. She quickly typed back, "Soon, baby. Order something to eat, okay? I'll be there as fast as I can." But soon was never soon enough. At home, Lily and her 8-year-old brother, Mike, sat at the kitchen table, their schoolwork spread out in front of them. The empty cereal bowls from breakfast were still there, and the fridge was nearly bare. "Again, I don't get this math problem," Mike grumbled, rubbing his eyes. Lily tried her best to help, squinted at the worksheet. "I think it's division, but I'm not sure." Their mother had left for work before they even woke up, and their father, Charles, had been away for months, sent by his company to oversee a project in the UK. Video calls weren't the same. They missed his silly jokes, the way he helped them with homework, and how he always made sure they had dinner together. Vivian loved her children more than anything, but the demands of her job left her exhausted. She hated that they were alone so often, that they had to fend for themselves most days. Something had to change. One evening, after finding Lily asleep on the couch with an unfinished essay and Mike still in his school uniform at 9 p.m., Vivian made a decision. She called Charles that night. "We need help," she admitted, her voice breaking. "The kids can't keep living like this." Charles, though miles away, agreed. "Let's hire someone, a nanny or a housekeeper. Someone responsible who can be there when you can't." After days of interviews, they found her Miss Aline. She was warm, experienced, and had a gentle way with children. On her first day, she arrived with homemade cookies, helped Lily and Mike with their homework, and had a hot meal ready by the time Vivian got home. For the first time in months, the house felt peaceful. But as Vivian watched Miss Aline interact with her children, a strange unease settled in her stomach. Was this the solution they needed, or the beginning of something else? For the first few weeks, life in the Lawson household was better than ever. Miss Aline was everything Vivian had hoped for. Patient, nurturing, and incredibly attentive to Lily and Mike. She helped them with their homework, cooked their favorite meals, and even played games with them in the evenings. Vivian would come home to a clean house, happy children, and the comforting smell of dinner on the stove. Finally, she thought, things are falling into place. But then, little things started to change. At first, it was subtle. Miss Aline's cheerful tone shifted when Vivian wasn't around. Her smiles disappeared the moment the front door closed behind Vivian in the mornings. "Lily, stop dawdling. The dishes won't wash themselves," Celine snapped one day, her voice sharp as a whip. Lily flinched. "But Mom said we only have to help with small chores." "Did I ask what your mother said?" Celine cut her off, leaning down until her face was inches from Lily's. "In this house, when I'm in charge, you do as I say." "Understood." Mike, watching from the doorway, swallowed hard. From then on, the rules tightened like a noose. Miss Aline made them scrub floors, fold laundry, and dust every corner of the house before they were allowed to even think about homework. If they missed a spot, she made them start over. If they took too long, she withheld dinner. "You're lazy, just like your mother," she hissed one evening when Mike's hands shook from exhaustion as he mopped the kitchen. "No wonder she dumps you on me. Who would want to deal with such useless children?" Lily's eyes burned with tears, but she bit her lip, silent. The worst part? The threats. "If you tell anyone, your mother, your teachers, anyone, about how things are in this house, you'll regret it," Celine whispered one night, her grip bruising on Lily's wrist. "I'll make sure your mother loses her job. I'll make sure your father never comes home. And then who will take care of you? No one." The fear was paralyzing. At school, Lily and Mike's grades dropped badly. They were too tired to focus, too hungry to think straight. Mike fell asleep during math class twice in 1 week. Lily, once a straight-A student, stared blankly at her test paper, her mind foggy with exhaustion. Their teachers noticed. "Lily, is everything okay at home?" Mrs. Carter asked gently after class one day. Lily opened her mouth, then remembered Celine's warning. The cold grip of fear squeezed her heart. You'll regret it. Everything's fine, she mumbled, forcing a smile. But it wasn't fine. And the worst part? When Vivian came home, Miss Celine's mask slipped right back into place. Sweet, caring, perfect. Did you have a good day, my loves? She cooed, ruffling Mike's hair as Vivian walked in. The kids nodded weakly, their eyes hollow. Vivian smiled, oblivious. I'm so glad they're in good hands. But the hands that held them weren't good at all. They were claws, and the trap was only tightening. One day, Mrs. Carter pulled Vivian aside after parent-teacher meetings, her brow furrowed with concern. Lily's grades have dropped drastically. She used to be one of my top students, but now she can barely stay awake in class. Mr. Davies, Mike's teacher, nodded in agreement. Mike falls asleep almost every afternoon, and when he's awake, he's distracted, like he hasn't eaten all day. Vivian waved them off with a light laugh. Oh, they're just being kids. Staying up too late, probably watching cartoons. I'll talk to them. But she didn't, because when she got home, Miss Celine was there, smiling, warm, perfect. The house was spotless. Dinner was ready, and the kids were quiet. Too quiet. Vivian didn't notice the way Lily's hands trembled as she picked at her food. She didn't see the dark circles under Mike's eyes. They're fine, she told herself. Everything is fine. One evening, Mrs. Helen, their elderly neighbor, was watering her plants when she heard it. A sharp, furious scream. I said no food until you finish scrubbing the floors. Her blood ran cold. That was Miss Celine's voice, but not the sweet, gentle tone she always used when Vivian was around. This was harsh, cruel. Then came the whimpers. Please, Miss Celine, we're so hungry. Just a little bread. Do the work first, or you'll get nothing. Mrs. Helen's heart pounded. She had always thought something was off about the way those children looked. Too thin, too tired. But she never imagined this. She marched straight to Vivian's door the next morning. Vivian, we need to talk. Vivian blinked, surprised. Is everything okay, Helen? No, it's not. Helen's voice was firm. Yesterday, I heard Miss Celine yelling at your children. She refused to feed them until they finished cleaning. They were begging for food, Vivian. Vivian's face hardened. That can't be true. Celine adores them. She cooks for them every day. Open your eyes. Helen snapped. Look at your children. Really look at them. They're fading away. But Vivian shook her head, her trust in Celine unshaken. You must have misunderstood. Celine would never hurt them. Helen stared at her, stunned. One day, you'll regret not listening. As she walked away, Lily and Mike watched from the stairs, hopeless, defeated. No one believed them. No one saved them. Mrs. Helen had seen enough. For days, she watched from her window, her heart breaking as she witnessed the cruelty unfolding next door. The children, just babies really, returned from school with slumped shoulders, only to be met with Miss Celine's icy glare instead of a warm meal. But today, she would do more than just listen. Today, she would get proof. That afternoon, as Lily and Mike dragged themselves to the front door, Miss Celine stood waiting, arms crossed. Wipe your feet properly. Do you want to dirty my clean floors? She snapped before they could even set down their backpacks. Lily flinched. We're sorry, Miss Celine. We're just really hungry. Hungry? Celine scoffed, picking up a plate of fried chicken and rice from the counter. Her own lunch. She settled onto the couch, taking a slow, deliberate bite. You'll eat after you scrub the kitchen floor. And if I see a single speck of dirt, you'll do it again. Mike's stomach growled loudly, but he didn't dare complain. Silently, he and Lily knelt on the hard tiles, a bucket of soapy water between them, their small hands scrubbing until their fingers turned red. All while Celine watched, chewing lazily. Faster, she ordered, kicking a stray sock toward Lily. And pick that up. From outside the window, Mrs. Helen's hands shook, but not just from anger. Her phone was recording everything. The way Celine lounged like a queen while the children worked like servants. The way she taunted them with food they weren't allowed to touch. the way their tired eyes flickered toward the plate, then away, as if they'd already given up hope. Helen's jaw tightened. This will end today. Vivian was in the middle of a meeting when her phone buzzed. An unknown number, no, wait, it was Mrs. Helen's, had sent her a video. Frowning, she excused herself and stepped into the hallway, pressing play, and her world shattered. There on the screen was her daughter, her baby, on her knees, scrubbing the floor while tears streamed down her face. Mike beside her, his small frame trembling with exhaustion, and Celine, smirking, eating, enjoying their suffering. Vivian's breath came in short, sharp gasps. Her hands turned ice cold. How long had this been happening? How had she not seen it? The video kept playing, Celine's voice sharp as a knife. You think your mother cares? She's never here. I'm in charge now. Vivian's vision blurred. She had failed them. Vivian didn't even wait for the elevator. She took the stairs 2 at a time, her heels clicking furiously against the concrete as she burst out of the bank. Her phone was already dialing. Charles, she choked out the second he answered. We need to talk. Now. Then she called the one person she knew wouldn't hesitate. Helen, she said, her voice raw. I'm coming home. Don't let Celine leave. When Vivian's car screeched in the driveway, Celine was at the door, all fake smiles and sweetness. Vivian, you're home early. Vivian didn't speak. She just held up her phone, the video still playing. Celine's face drained of color. Behind her, Lily and Mike stood frozen in the hallway, their eyes wide, hopeful, afraid. Vivian took one step forward, then another. Get out of my house. Vivian, let me explain. Celine opened her mouth to lie, to manipulate, but for once, words failed her, because Vivian wasn't just angry. She was a mother who had just realized her children had been screaming for help in silence, and she was done letting them suffer. Leave before I do something I'll regret. For the first time, Celine looked scared. She scurried upstairs, her hurried footsteps shaking the walls. Lily burst into tears. Vivian fell to her knees and pulled both children into her arms. I'm so sorry, she whispered, her own tears soaking into Lily's hair. I'm so sorry. Mike clutched her sleeve. You believe us now? The guilt nearly choked her. I should have believed your teachers and Mrs. Helen from the start. I trusted Celine too much. This will never happen again, I promise. She hugged them tight as they lay on her arms. Charles flew home the next day. When he saw the video, his face went pale, then red with rage. We're pressing charges. And they did. Police reports were filed. School records were pulled, the plummeting grades, the teachers' concerns. Mrs. Helen gave a sworn statement. The evidence was undeniable. Celine was arrested for child endangerment and emotional abuse. The media caught wind. Nanny from Hell splashed across tabloids. Her past employers came forward with similar stories. She'd done this before. Vivian sat in the courtroom, gripping Charles's hand as Celine was sentenced. The woman's venomous glare promised revenge, but Vivian didn't flinch. Therapy was hard, but necessary. Lily barely spoke during her first sessions, clinging to the stuffed rabbit Charles had brought her. Mike expressed his anger through jagged drawings of dark scribbles. And Vivian? She sat in her own therapist's office, finally admitting the guilt that had been crushing her. At home, things changed slowly. Vivian started leaving work by 5 p.m. sharp. Charles arranged to work remotely. They ate dinner together every night. Sometimes burned, sometimes perfect, but always together. Mike began asking for seconds without fear. Lily's nightmares became less frequent. One night, as Vivian tucked him in, Mike whispered, "You won't leave us again, right?" Vivian kissed his forehead, her voice steady. "Never." And she meant it. Months later, the transformation was undeniable. Lily laughed freely again. Mike brought home A++ on his math test, beaming with pride. When Vivian found Celine's old chore list while spring cleaning, she burned in the backyard without hesitation. As the flames consumed the last remnant of that dark chapter, Lily squeezed her mother's hand. No words were needed. The nightmare was over. The Lawsons had finally come home to each other. The scent of freshly baked cookies filled the Lawson home as Agnes, their new nanny, pulled another tray from the oven. Lily and Mike crowded around the counter, their faces smeared with chocolate chips as they helped decorate the next batch. Vivian watched from the doorway, a soft smile playing on her lips. This was the childhood her kids deserved, messy, joyful, and safe. She had traded her high-powered bank job for a small consultancy with flexible hours. The pay cut was worth every missed dollar when she could now attend school plays and help with homework without rushing. Charles, working remotely for his company's UK branch, comes home every 3 months to spend at least 2 weeks with the family. While organizing her home office one afternoon, Vivian's fingers brushed against a long-forgotten folder. The court documents inside felt heavier than they should as she flipped them open. Celine's mugshot stared back at her, the once smug nanny now reduced to a pale, hollow-eyed version of herself. The sentencing details jumped off the page. Prohibited from working with minors for life. 3 years imprisonment. Permanent mark on criminal record. Vivian traced the embossed court seal with her thumb before snapping the folder shut. She expected to feel anger or at least vindication. Instead, there was only quiet closure, like finally turning the last page of a terrible book. Downstairs, laughter erupted as Agnes pretended to scold Mike for eating more cookie dough than he put on the baking sheet. Lily's giggles floated up the stairs, light and unburdened. Vivian placed the folder in the shredder and walked toward the sound of her family's joy. The scars remained, but they no longer defined them. The Lawsons had survived the storm, and on the other side, they'd found their sunshine.